Welcome to Mexico, and this is what I think is one of the great underrated tracks in F1. It's really fun to me, and it's a track that's really going to reward being patient in the right spots. If you ever went through a driving clinic, they would tell you to make sure you run slow turns slow and fast turns fast. And what I mean by that is there's a couple of sections here that are really slow, like the stadium section that I just came out of, and if you're trying to hustle the car through there too fast, you're probably going to end up overdriving the car and actually end up going slower. So the trick is figuring out where you need to go slow, where you need to go fast, and we'll talk about that here. There's also a couple of spots here that just really reward being patient, but for the most part, you can drive pretty hard here. Lastly, remember I was not well liked as a kid, so grab the heaviest object in your refrigerator and slam it into your like button. All right, now let's take a lap. Now the first first set of corners here, once we get this car slowed down at the first turn, we're just gonna maintain speed all the way through and use the curbs. All right, we're gonna go to 125, brake, 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 brake. And from here out, no brakes. All right, we're just gonna maintain speed, turn off the access road, keep maintaining speed, use the curbs. And notice more or less equal throttle all the way through there. Now we're gonna come to the next spot. We're gonna go to about 110. We're gonna slow down, get down to about third gear. Make a nice sweep into the turn. Pull it back farther to the left, get down to second. Curb, now I like to go 2 over, and then once we're at the low end of fourth gear, make a nice sweep. That last apex there is the one you really care about. We're gonna go to about the Petronas sign and make a long, light drag of the brake. Be patient around this left-hander, by the way, and then be a little bit patient as you set up this right, and then you can just accelerate right through there. Being on the right spot and the right rhythm is helpful. Now brake about the curbs and the bridge. They're about together. You can really hustle it around that corner faster than you think. Get to the curb, turn at the end of the curb, and just kind of connect the dots. Drive over both of these curbs, and I say you need to be 2 over as well. Get about halfway down, turn in again. This is a very traction limited spot, so try to just be gentle going back to the gas. And that's a lap of Mexico, guys. Now let's go turn by turn.
So I brake at about 125. I don't really use that camera operator or spotter's crane really, but this is about 125 pretty much no matter what you do, DRS, ERS, rich, lean, whatever. It seems like 125 is about the mark. I also use the left fence marks for this. You could try to use these, but I like to keep my eyes as close to the trajectory the car is on as possible. Also a note on that I made, you don't have to go 2 over. This is harder for me to time than just keeping it on the track rather than, because you have to make a relatively late shift left and then it alters. It just makes you able to turn a little bit differently and faster, and it's a little bit tricky to get your timing right if you do 2 over the curb. So it's not essential that you do that here. It's fine if you want to just stay 4 on the track. You turn just as the curb starts tapering in, and your goal is to put 2 on that curb, but as long as you're close to it, you're fine. There is an access road here. You want to note this, and my wheel is turned to the right. You can just barely see it around my highlighted words there. And just as I get to this, and maybe just as I pass this access road, is when I switch my wheel back to the left. Another thing I want to point out here is that once I come off the brake going around turn 1, I go to about this much gas, and I might lift a little, I might hustle a little bit, but my gas is going to stay about what I call maintenance throttle, which is basically what you use when you're driving down a highway. I mean, you're just maintaining speed, all right? And you're just going to keep maintaining speed until you get to that straightaway. Doing a lot of gas brake through here really jacks the car up, so just maintain speed nice and smooth. These are the most important curbs to nail, which I stupidly put the words on, but you can see I'm 2 tires like over these curbs. I'm barely on the track, and I think this is the most important because if you hit this curb right and you're in that maintenance throttle, it doesn't really jack the car up. I mean, it does, but I mean, you basically need the car to go straight anyway, and bumping the car around is going to make it go straight. And that's just fine. This is the point, however, we don't want to use that red turtle curb, which is going to be a very common thing I'm going to talk about in this track. 2 on this curb is fine. But the main thing at this point is you need to be working on getting the car pointed down the straightaway and starting to work your way back to wide open throttle, but it likes to spin out here. If you need it, use it, but don't feel compelled to if you don't need to. So if you were on the gas early enough, the car is going to want to carry out here, and notice that you can keep 2 over the curb for a long way, pretty much to the bridge, and don't be scared to use this if you need it. Coming down to the next straightaway, or at the end of the next straightaway, you come to about 110, which the marks are in the fence and on the ground, conveniently enough. And I go to, like I said, about 110 seems to work no matter what. And that's pretty much my brake marker no matter what tire, no matter what fuel load. So we're going to brake hard at 110. You may want to notice that there's a spot up here you might be able to index off of, which is like where the road starts turning off there, which is like a little way that for other circuits you may cut out this section. Or never mind, it's just an extra runoff patch. Never mind, that's up here. So you're going to turn just before the curb ends, aiming to get on that curb, but if you don't get on it, that's fine. You just need to be close. This is actually quite a bit wide. Ideally, you'd be over here, but I don't think it's too important. What you do want to do is as you go around that curb, you want the car to come left of center. And keep whatever wheel input you need it to make that left, you want to keep that until you get to about here. I actually screenshotted right at the moment I turned right. And it's about halfway between the two corners. And then I switch back to the right relatively quickly with the goal of hitting those curbs. But hitting those curbs is not as essential, but you do want to be at least to the verge line, like right there. If you can get on those curbs, good, but don't hit the red turtle curb. Now here's where there's two different philosophies. If you keep 4 on the track, you can briefly go wide open throttle, but you were going slower to do that anyway. And you're also going to be making this turn ahead tighter, and tighter to turn, the slower it is, as we should know. So my philosophy is keep 2 tires on this green. Now the thing is, this is like a slick piece of paint or something on the track. And it is totally up to you if you want to use this. But you notice I'm not quite full throttle, and I'm not going to be full throttle through here. I'm going to make it to 4th gear. I might brake just a little bit past the caution box. And I will say this is one of those brake zones that if you feel like you did it just a little early, you probably did it right. And this is actually a spot where I differ off of the track acclimatization and AI a little bit. I did turn a little bit late. I am around the curb, so there is a curb right there that I basically ignore. I turn a little late, and like you could just about drive another car between me and that curb. What I want to do, the only curb I really care about in this whole sequence is this one. The track acclimatization program puts a gate about right here, and I think that's pinching the corner up too much because by staying out a little bit wider and by bringing the car in later, look at the nice trajectory I have. I mean, I'm already at this point starting to unwind the wheel down the straightaway. I'm starting to apply gas again because compared to where we were here, there was no gas. I'm already getting back to the gas and ready to launch it down this straightaway. All right, now 2 over the outside curb is fine if you need it, but if not, that's okay as well. And you notice my time delta is in the red, but it did come down some. Now, there's a few different index points I've used. Last year, my thing was I would drive about a second past this little access road. About a second past the access road is going to put you at this light and that Petronas sign. There are distance signs, but I don't really use them. And to be honest, I'm not going to admit how long I'd been driving this track before I even saw them. You might even use the beginning of the curb as an index and use it kind of as a timing and rhythm depth perception sort of thing. How long have I been in them? But there's a lot of reference points coming into this next corner. I will say as well that this is where a lot of things determine how you drive the track. How much aero did you use? Are you on fresh tires? How soft are those tires? Is it the beginning of the race where you're running a heavy fuel load? Is it a practice program where you've only got a little bit of fuel in the car? That matters a lot here. And so what I would say is just be ready to change it up a lot. If you're on red tires in qualifying, you can almost wide open throttle this next section with just a couple of little brief brushes of the brakes. This was run on a qualifying sim in practice, by the way. So anyway, I've already been into brakes, and if you watch this video, I was at about half brake a little bit before this, and then I quickly trailed off, and I turned just before the 50 marker. But for me, it's just kind of a rhythm and timing tells me when to turn. To be honest, I am a little inconsistent here, so after this video, next time I go, I'm going to try to make a note to start using that as a turn-off indicator. You can actually use the inside grass there with your left side tires with really minimal to no consequences as long as you keep those right tires on the track. There we go. Now, right here is where I've trailed off the brakes and maybe I've used a little bit of gas, but I should be getting back to the gas momentarily. And I'm going to try to, probably about time I get into that shadow, but the shadow moves, so don't use it as a reference. I'm looking to go back to the gas and go wide open throttle around this right if I can. There again, a lot of things matter as far as how fast you can drive these S's. So here I am going around the S's. I was not quite able to do wide open throttle. I was running a pretty low aero, I may have been. I ended up settling at 5.6 for the race, but I don't know what I was running in this particular program, honestly. So hug this curb, maybe not quite to the end, but to at least about right there. Now this left-hander, this one, I would say once you get to about right here is where you need to start thinking, I need to be patient, because if you try to wide open throttle sling the car around this, you're going to end up on the wrong side of track. You're going to be on the right-hand side of track going into a right-hand corner, and it's going to totally jack up your momentum. So just be nice and patient around this left side. The car, when you come off the corner, is going to want to pop out to the right. You don't want it to pop more than about where I'm at now. And you will, once you get the car settled and after it kind of takes its little pop wide, you'll be able to go wide open throttle momentarily. And you want to be looking at about this curb and the end of that wall as far as where you're going to turn in again. Now, this is not necessarily a telling you where to be, but this is telling you where to look. You can already see the left-hand curb ahead if you're on this tall view. But you want to take your eyes up as soon as you can and look at that curb, because it's going to tell your brain where to go. If you get fixated on this curb, that next curb is going to come up on you so fast. And all you got to do is, as a driving instructor would tell you all the time on a racetrack, look ahead. And it'll make it seem like it's coming at you a lot slower. All right? So we want to hold the right-hand curb to about this point, but like I said, we should have already taken at least a glance up to see this curb. And it really will help you determine, oh yeah, I need to hold this curb right. I don't need to let go of it too quick, right? So once you're here, you shouldn't be looking at the curb anymore. This should just be peripheral vision. If you're looking ahead, your eyes pick up what's close, but if you're looking close, your eyes don't pick up what's ahead. Test that theory out sometime on your own. As we come to the left, notice we're just barely in track limits here. Honestly, I remember running this lap and thinking I'm about to get it black and white flagged, and it didn't. I was on strict limits, by the way. And now, no matter what your aero setting is, if you had to slow down before on a low aero setting, you should be able to go wide open throttle from here to the Rolex bridge. And work on driving those S's in such a way as that you are able to do that. 2 over this curb or even that next curb is fine. Nothing too fancy here. I say put the car 2 tires over this curb. I even say 2 tires on the inside of those red and whites, not on them, honestly. I think the car drives a little bit better that way. Just, beware the limits. The curb, the bridge all start about the same time. If you're going to stay inside the white lines, you're going to have to brake a little earlier. If you're able to do this, you can probably go until you're in full curb. You can see it kind of tapers up ahead. So you brake, and it's a faster turn than it looks like. You notice I'm in 4th gear running 100 miles an hour. I don't look at my speedometer when I'm driving, honestly. I look at it way more in these screenshots. But this right-hand bend is a lot faster than you think. Use all the curb except that little red turtle. Common theme here. You want 2 tires on that curb, which is what this is on trajectory to do. And you can even put 2 tires over onto the green here. A note on track limits, it seems like if these 2 tires just kind of kiss that curb, it calls a violation. But it seems like if you kind of go way wide, like if you messed up, it gives it to you. And then you can bring the car back on the track without consequence. And now you're aiming to this curb. Now, I've been into brakes for a moment. You can see I'm actually in the middle of a downshift. And it's like once I get to the bottom of 5th gear, that's one of the ways I know to tell is that if I ran the last corner right, once I shift to 5th, it's just shift to 5th, a moment, brake. Maybe not even a moment. I'm not in 5th gear even a whole second, I'm sure. So brake just before the curbs, and you're going to turn at the end of the curb, which I stupidly put a highlight mark over. And by the time you get to the end of that curb braking, you're going to be down to 3rd gear, going very slow. And this is a spot where you need to be patient. We're always in a spot where, as soon as we come off the brake, we want to go to the gas, which is a good general rule. But not if it's at the expense of just totally jacking up our positioning of the car. And this is actually a spot where I would say this section is where car placement is most critical on this whole track. You want 2 tires on this curb, and you want your eyes looking up here. And you don't want to even go back to even half throttle until you can see and have a plan with the car to put 2 tires, the right-hand tires in this case, on that curb ahead. If you're on regular track limits, you can play around a lot more here. I'm on strict limits, so I'm going to touch this curb, and I'm going to draw a nice straight line really quickly, and I'm going to put 2 tires on this curb with a nice right-hand trajectory. And right here, my next thing is, this is kind of like a connect the dot series. The last thing, we connect left dot to right, left curb to right curb, and now we're going to connect to this next curb ahead. And we want to have a plan. Once we're back here, you'll be able to see it better a moment after you go around this corner, but you'll be able to see the track kind of curves in right there, and you'll be able to see a path to put 2 tires over that curb. And I think it's actually very essential that you have 2 tires over this curb in order to take this next right as fast as you can, and go under the bridge. You might use that caution light as an index. I personally don't. I just know once I'm on this curb, once I'm about halfway down it, because it is a relatively short curb, so I kind of can tell by depth perception once I'm about halfway down the curb, and I'm also looking at this right-hand curb to know, and that's when I'll make my turn in. I'll make my turn in such a way as that I can put 2 tires on that red and white curb, but avoid the tall red curb, and be patient going back to throttle here. I will be in 3rd gear. There are some red and white curbs, and I don't think there's really any use to use them out there. I would have been farther wide, and you kind of put the car in the middle of the track. But be careful putting down power. If you try to get to this red and white curb, you're going to lose traction most likely. The car spins out when you have too much gas and too much wheel at the same time in the car. So just aim to put down a lot of gas, keep the wheels straighter. Some coaches I used to work with used to say, open up the wheel. This is a nice wide open run to the front stretch, and that's a lap at Mexico, guys. Now let's take a look at an uninterrupted lap.
We need you to improve on that. Okay, super job so far. We're getting great